This is the Brooks Ghost 16, and while it's tempting to write it off as a shoe that just never changes, this year, I think there's actually a lot of good to this Ghost. Yo, what's going on? My name is Kofuzi and I'm a non-elite runner who reviews running shoes here on YouTube, and today I want to talk to you guys about the Brooks Ghost 16. But before I give you my thoughts on this shoe, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that Brooks sent to me for the purpose of review, so I did not have to pay for these shoes. However, nobody's paying me to make this video or to include their shoe in this video, and no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Brooks Ghost 16, and let's start with some specs. Brooks tells me that this is a 24mm stack height shoe with a 12mm drop, giving us 12mm of stack height in the forefoot. And if my Brooks Glycerin 21 video is any indication, a lot of you guys are gonna get very mad about the numbers that Brooks itself, the manufacturer, gave me. And it also shows me that some of you don't realize that there isn't a standard way of measuring stack height. A lot of people will view stack heights as something that you have to measure according to the World Athletics rules, which basically includes outsole, midsole, and insole. And there's certain portions of the shoe, areas at which the measurements must be taken. However, a lot of companies are still reporting stack height measurements in terms of technical specs as to what they're giving the factory, and that means that they're giving us a measurement that includes just the midsole foam and not necessarily the outsole, which there is a lot on the Brooks Ghost, or the insole, which can be a lot depending on which shoe and which material the insole is made out of. And I think that that is all a very big distraction to the big part of the story here for me, is that the Brooks Ghost is still a 12mm heel drop shoe. I believe that's the tallest heel drop that we have in the running industry in 2024. And that really tall heel drop can be desirable to some runners, but for a lot of you out there, and for me personally as well, it's something that I've been hoping that Brooks would someday eventually change on the Ghost, but so far, at least as version 16, we're still seeing that 12mm drop. And the other big part of the story with the midsole for the Ghost 16 this year is that it's made out of DNA Loft version 3, which is a nitro supercritical foam, which means they are taking a source material, in this case EVA and rubber, pressurizing it until it gets to a very hot temperature, and then injecting gas, which in this case is nitrogen gas, as the foam expands and fills to the shape of that midsole. This year's version 3 is supposed to provide the same level of responsiveness and durability, but it's supposed to be even lighter. Now, when we get to the outsole, we have Brooks Road Tack outsole, and there is a lot of rubber and silica that goes into this outsole, and this material is supposed to be lightweight, but there's just so much of it. You're getting especially thick amounts of it towards the outer wall of the shoe, and then you're still getting plenty of rubber coverage in the forefoot and on the medial side of the shoe as well. Moving to the upper, we have an engineered mesh, which is very comfortable. The Brooks Ghost is perennially a very comfortable shoe to put on. It still kind of has a running shoe fit, but it's never crunching my toes. The material that they use for the upper is always nice and soft and stretchy. And in terms of the tongue, there is the just right amount of padding for a shoe that's going to be used in the way that the Brooks Ghost is going to be used. And as we get to the heel cup, we have basically a upholstered bear trap where you have a lot of structure back here. The heel cup here is very rigid and it just extends very tall, and then it's covered with the upper material and also a nice amount of padding, but not too much. I actually feel like they've done a really good job of staying restrained in terms of the amount of puffiness that they're putting in the back of the shoe, and overall the shoe for me fit true to size, and it was very comfortable to have on foot. And the last thing to note about the Brooks Ghost 16 is that it is a carbon neutral shoe, and Brooks says that they're achieving this by using recycled materials wherever they can, and also by purchasing carbon offsets. Altogether, the changes to the Brooks Ghost 16 this year result in a shoe that is 9.8 ounces or 277 grams. Now that we've gone over the paper specs, let's talk about what it was like to run in the shoe. And I'll say that the DNA Loft version 3 is pretty nice in the Ghost. It's a bit softer and it's smoother for sure. It doesn't feel like it has a 12mm heel drop in this shoe. It doesn't feel like a 6mm heel drop shoe either, but it doesn't feel like it's kind of unusually or unnecessarily tall anymore. I feel like that DNA Loft version 3 squishes just enough as your heel hits the foam that the heel drop doesn't feel quite so intense. Now, while I personally haven't loved the Brooks Ghost myself for my set of preferences, I do recognize that it is one of the best selling shoes in the United States. And I generally think that there are two kinds of Brooks Ghosts buyers. The first kind is for someone that's going to use it for running and walking or just standing around. It's a very comfortable shoe to stand in. It's a very comfortable shoe to have on foot. I feel like it's really nice to have on for casual wear or for someone that's going to be on their feet a lot of the day. I feel like the Brooks Ghost does have a really nice level of softness. And this kind of ties into the whole conversation of what is softness that we've been having over the course of this year and starting a little bit at the end of last year. And so I feel like a lot of times softness is a function of time. With the DNA Loft version 3, I feel like it's optimized for a slower squish and a slower return. And so when I'm standing in it, when I'm walking in it, when I'm using it kind of a little bit more casually, that's where I feel like the return rate of that squish and decompression works out really nicely and the shoe feels very soft. But for me, when I'm running in it, I feel like I'm hitting the shoe really fast and it's not giving the foam time to compress and decompress. So ultimately the sensation that I get is firm. So I feel like the runners that do enjoy the Brooks Ghost as it is and as it has been tend to be my bigger, taller friends, people that prefer a firmer shoe, and also people who are really rough on their outsoles. There's just a lot of rubber material that covers this shoe, and I feel like the tread is almost as thick as some of the trail shoes that I run in. And so for people that are scuffing up their outsoles or they just wear them down really quickly, they've been really enjoying the extra amount of rubber that the Ghost has to offer. But I think with the changes this year, there's a third kind of runner that the Brooks Ghost may now start to appeal to, and I think that's for people that want a kind of shoe that is just a little bit more stable or just a little bit less floppy. Even if you normally prefer really mushy shoes like I do, there might be times where you are looking for a shoe that has maybe, let's say, a hint of stability to it. Something that I've noticed as I've been interviewing more and more professional athletes, and I've been asking them about shoes that they run in, not only when they race, but also when they are just doing their everyday runs, is that a lot of them tend to reach for a shoe that has just a little bit of stability in it, if not an actual outright stability shoe for those recovery runs, for days when their body is feeling beat up. Now, personally, I like a shoe that's very mushy for that kind of application, but I've been starting to enjoy shoes like the Brooks Ghost and other similar kind of stability shoes for my recovery run days. And I've been finding that a shoe like the Brooks Ghost, which has a very wide middle portion of the shoe and also has a pretty chunky heel in the back, combined with a very rigid heel cup, makes for a very kind of solid piece of shoe in the back that my beat up left ankle is really appreciating. And with the additional softness that DNA Loft version 3 provides, I can get that kind of support that my body is kind of craving, along with the material that I find to be much more runnable than it has been in the past. Now, I also have tried running a little bit faster in this shoe, picking up the pace a little bit or just running some strides. And I find that I really don't like the Brooks Ghost for any of those situations. But overall, I feel like for those of you who have enjoyed Ghost in the past, you're still going to really enjoy this Ghost. And for those of you who have thought that the Ghost could use some changes, I'm not sure this is exactly the shoe that you're looking for, but I feel like it's a great move in the right direction. Now let's get to the end portion of the video where we're talking about some potential pairing options if you're looking to build a rotation around the Brooks Ghost, and then we'll get into some alternatives when we get into the buying guide. First, for some pairing options, I think that if you are a target Brooks Ghost user and you're using this as your everyday trainer, I think two shoes that you're gonna want is an even more comfy shoe to have on like kind of recovery days, or maybe even a long, slow distance kind of day, and then also a race shoe. For that long, slow distance, I'm gonna take you out of the Brooks family and point you to a shoe that I think has a lot of similar characteristics to the Brooks Ghost, and that's the Topo Atmos. This is a very tall stack height shoe that I feel like is a little bit firmer than it looks, but it has a nice wide midfoot, a chunky heel, and a nice top layer of softness to it that rolls really well from its geometry. It's got just the right amount of padding and just the right amount of support, and it's got an even more forgiving foot shape than the Brooks Ghost has. So for those days where you need extra comfort, the Topo Atmos is going to take care of you. And then for your racing, I think we can stay in the Brooks family, and the shoe that I'm going to recommend to race in is going to be the Hyperion Max. Now this is a DNA Flash midsole shoe, which is another nitrogen-based foam shoe, but a much more firm material underfoot, which doesn't feel as good for running your everyday miles, but when you're picking up the pace, when you're pushing off of the ground harder, when you're pushing more into the shoe becomes very exciting in that bounce back that it gives. There's no plate in this shoe, but I feel like for the material that they're using here, I'm not sure that it really even needs it, and it stays really lightweight and fits on the foot really comfortably. So I feel like that is going to be a good racing shoe for you to look at. Now let's look at the buying guide and some alternatives that I think you should look at. The Brooks Ghost 16 releases on May 1st at a price of $140. And in my mind, that just feels like a lot of money to pay for a Brooks Ghost. But let's see where that $140 price tag stacks up compared to other shoes that I think are doing similar things to the Brooks Ghost. And the first one that I'm going to point to you is the Puma Forever Run. Now, this is a shoe that I've actually really been loving. It has a lot of the same kind of concepts that the Brooks Ghost has. It has a very wide footprint, has a very chunky heel, and it kind of has like a little bit of stability in it in the heel cup and heel area in much of the same ways that I'm enjoying in the Brooks Ghost. I do find that the Forever Run with its dual layers of supercritical foams is a much more comfortable ride. It is a much softer ride that I'm preferring, but the Forever Run retails at $150, so it's $10 more. For me, that extra $10 would definitely be worth it for this type of shoe. But this shoe has also been out for a really long time, so while it's showing at full retail on the Puma.com website, you guys have been messaging me about the crazy good prices that you've been able to find for this shoe, and the lowest price that I've seen is $40. So if you can find this shoe in your size at that price, it's a definite pickup. And then the other shoe that I think we should talk about when we're talking about the new Brooks Ghost is the Ghost Max. Now this is a shoe that I definitely prefer to the Brooks Ghost. It has a 6mm drop. It has an even softer foam, even though it's technically made out of DNA Loft version 2. But if you've been thinking that the regular Brooks are just a little bit too firm, then I feel like the Brooks Ghost Max is going to be kind of the Ghost that you've always been looking for. I know that it certainly is for me, and I think that the Brooks Ghost Max may be my favorite Brooks. The Brooks Ghost Max comes in at a $10 premium, and to me the Brooks Ghost Max feels like maybe it's a $140 shoe, so I think it's a little bit on the pricey side. But if you are a Brooks fan, I feel like what Brooks has done with the updates to the Ghost and what they've done with the Ghost Max are going to be very appealing to you, so that price just might make a whole bunch of sense. So those are my thoughts on the Brooks Ghost 16. Still a Ghost, but more runnable than ever. Let me know if you have any other questions in the comments, or better yet, stop by the live stream I do Monday through Friday over on the Kofuzi Run Club channel. I'd love to talk to you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?